If you're an aspiring content creator, you've probably seen that this job gets glamorized a lot online. And maybe you've even wondered about the dark side or the dark moments of being a content creator. I can honestly say, as someone who's essentially doing this full-time now, there are some really horrible moments that you will experience as a content creator. And I thought in today's video, I would go through some of my worst moments in 2024. So this is only for this year. I've had many more horrible moments of being a content creator over the years, but I thought I would take the opportunity to film this video and be transparent about some of the fails that I've had as a content creator in 2024. But if you're new to this channel, hi, my name is Kaylee and I'm a beauty and fashion photographer based near Sydney, Australia. But I'm also a content creator and I started this channel a few years ago to talk about all things business, social media, freelancing, and content creation. And as I mentioned, we are going to be talking about some of my biggest fails as a content creator in 2024. And you guys can join me in knowing about some of my really sad moments throughout the year and some of my biggest fails. Now, I do want to preface this video by saying that being a content creator and having this as a job is in no way a terrible thing, and I am fully aware that there are a lot of jobs out there that are a lot harder than being a content creator. Of course, every job comes with its issues and its horrible moments, and I'm not saying that content creators don't put a lot of effort in, because we do. There is a lot to being a content creator, and it is a really slow build up for a lot of people to actually get to do this full time. It is a lot of hard work, but I'm also aware that there are a lot of jobs out there that are a lot harder, and I've unfortunately had to do some of them myself in the past, so I'm definitely very aware of that fact. And content creation overall is a very rewarding and very fun job, and I would never complain about it in that way. But today's video is to shed a little bit more transparency on some of those moments that you will probably find as a content creator that just really do get you down. And they are things to be aware of too, because some of these things can really affect your financial situation, and it can be a really big deal, especially if you are paying rent or you've got a mortgage, you've got a family. There are so many things to take into consideration as a content creator or as a freelancer even, and doing these kinds of jobs full time. And this is where some of these things I'm going to talk about today really do center around, and why they were kind of heartbreaking for me at times. So we're going to jump straight into some of these fails today, and the first fail that I'm going to talk about is actually a really heartbreaking one for me in particular. And this happened a little bit earlier this year. The reason it was so terrible for me was that I was actually approached by an industry leading brand in the photography and photo editing industry. Now, when I say industry leading, I mean the industry leading brand. And it was something that I had essentially waited for my entire photography career. And I never knew whether I would ever get the opportunity to work with this particular brand, but I always kind of hoped maybe in the back of my mind, one day there might be an opportunity for a collaboration or a chance to work together. So finally, this brand had recognized my work. They had reached out to me and I was so excited. And when I got that email, I was just like, I was almost in tears, because I was like, oh my God, I never thought this day would actually come. And so anyway, for a few weeks there, I was back and forth with the agency that was actually taking care of the campaign for this particular brand. And it was looking really good, and the collaboration had pretty much been finalized. I'd signed the contract. They were going to offer me a very nice sum of money, which at that time during the year, I really needed, because of a couple of reasons that I'm actually going to talk about in this video, a couple of other points that I will talk about that actually happened a bit earlier on. So needless to say, having a bit of extra money at this particular point in the year was going to be literally life-saving for me. So not only was I really excited to work with this brand, but also the money was really good. Probably one of the highest earning brand deals for the actual amount of content I had to do that I had ever received. So as I mentioned, everything had been finalized. I had signed a contract, and then I received an email back from the agency one day, and they were inquiring about a video that I'd done probably about a month and a half earlier, where I'd actually collaborated with another brand, which they were deeming to be a competitor. And I responded to the agency, and essentially the brand that I worked with, they may have viewed as a competitor, but in terms of what each brand offered, I felt was very different. I felt they were very different products. So essentially I just said to them, yes, I did collaborate with them. However, I do feel that they're very different products. I'm not really sure if you'd consider that like a direct competitor. The agency wasn't actually sure either, so that's why they were inquiring with me. So they actually did end up halting the collaboration at that point. They said, look, we are going to have to go to this particular brand and double check to see whether this collaboration can actually go ahead, because if it is deemed to be a competitor, it's unfortunately something that they would not want to proceed with. So unfortunately, when I actually got this email through, my heart sank, and immediately I kind of had this thought in the back of my head, like, I feel that they're actually going to deem this a competitor brand. I feel like most other brands wouldn't probably worry that much about this, and especially because it had been filmed and done like a month and a half ago. But this particular brand, I was pretty certain was going to deem this as a competitor brand. So I then had this excruciating wait period of waiting for them to respond and actually confirm with their agency. And unfortunately, the agency got back to me like a week later and said, sadly, we can't proceed with this particular collaboration at this time because they are considering it to be a competitor brand and we'd love to maybe work with you in future. So unfortunately, as I mentioned at this time, I was really in need of some extra money. It was not a good time financially earlier at this point in the year, and it was just really a sad thing to have happened. Oh, and I also just wanted to mention the competitor deal that I actually negotiated a couple of months prior actually ended up being a lot less money. I'm talking like they actually whittled down my rates quite a bit and negotiated down. But again, I was kind of like, well, I really like what the brand have to offer, so I'm going to go ahead with it. I felt like it was still worthwhile, but it was still a lot less than what I was being offered with this other brand deal. So it's always something to keep in mind as a content creator, that be careful of what brand deals you take because you never know what the opportunities are going to be in future, and that could be impacted. Not the worst thing, honestly, I feel that's on this list, but the fact that that was so close yet so far at the same time, and it had been a brand that I had thought about working with for a long time and wondered whether I'd ever get the chance. And not only did it sort of like halfway get through, but then obviously the money was great and it just all fell apart at that point. So that was one of my first fails of 2024. And now I'm going to go into a couple of reasons as to why financially this started to really affect me at this point in the year, because I had another few brand deals at the time that I was supposed to be working on. Now, originally I had signed on with a brand for this year for 12 months to essentially be doing an output of one video a month. And that was just going to be an integration for this particular brand. I'd been working with this brand for quite a long time at this point, and I really enjoyed working for them. And sadly, this is where my second fail comes into effect. And I still kind of feel sad about this to this day. I don't know what it was, but I just kind of feel sad with the way that it ended, but also kind of frustrated, not gonna lie. They basically just came to me out of the blue one day, probably about 4 months into the contract, and basically just told me they were going in a different direction and that they would be ceasing all collaborations, all contracts with all content creators at that point. And it wasn't a personalized email to me, it was just like a generic email that they'd clearly sent out to all content creators. Again, I've been working with these guys for quite a long time at this point. There was no kind of like offer of potentially working on something again in future, no further outreach. It was just like cease. And that was really sad for me because again, I'd signed a 12-month contract with them. There was due to be a certain amount of money coming in each month that I was kind of expecting from this brand as well. I'd been working with them for quite a long time, and then to just kind of be like ceasing on that contract just like that with no further contact was kind of sad. And the worst thing is that the person or my contact with this particular brand that I had been working with for a long time, who I really enjoyed working with, actually had only left about a month prior. And that's when a few things started happening with this particular brand that weren't really sitting right with me in the lead up to this moment. But unfortunately, I really didn't see this coming. It was kind of like a blindside, and again, affected my financial situation at this time. This was also in combination with the previous job that I was just mentioning with this other big brand that was putting that money on the table for me. So when that came along, I was like, oh, thank God. And this is like such a great opportunity. And then obviously that was ripped away really quickly too. So really terrible time earlier this year for both of those things to go down. And then to make things worse, here's where my third fail came into effect. So essentially, again, earlier this year, I had signed another contract with another brand that was regarding some content that I would produce for them. And essentially the videos that I would produce for them were going to be for their particular YouTube channel and their YouTube channel only. I was not going to be posting anything on my own channels. This was all basically for them and for their own marketing purposes. So I really was able to charge a little bit more for this type of content, because as a creator, when you do this kind of content, this is basically your face, your advertising material that they're then producing or putting onto their channel. You're not actually putting this onto your channel at all. And this was more of a startup brand too. So in terms of anything else that I was receiving from this, I was not receiving any any affiliate sales. I was not receiving anything like that. This was purely my time and effort into reading these scripts and then actually creating the videos and basically chopping them up in a basic format. So I was really excited to do this because it was for a startup brand. And again, the fees for this that they had accepted were quite good. Again, it was going to keep me really good and financially afloat for quite a number of months, along with the other brand deals that I'd already signed up to for the year. So again, this was going to be a really good time for me financially, because last year with the economy the way that it was so up and down as a freelancer and as a content creator. It was a really testing time. So I was like, yeah, 2024 is going to be the time that everything turns around for me. And then I got into doing this content basically for this brand and got probably about halfway through, and I'd received about half of my invoices for the half of the fees that I was supposed to get in total. And everything was really good feedback until this point. Really, really good feedback. They were really happy with the videos. So I was like, great, I'm going to continue filming these videos and creating them the way that they seem to be liking them. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing and hopefully get good feedback. And then they ghosted me. Just flat out stopped emailing me with scripts, with basically anything, any information, any updates. And then I started having to chase them and ask them what was happening and whether I was still doing the script and whether I needed to set time aside to create the videos, because this was quite content heavy and it was taking me quite a lot of time to actually do these videos, and especially reading off long scripts like they had for the video. It took a while for me to learn the script, to actually learn the lines, and it would take quite a lot of time. So I really needed to make sure I had the time to set aside for it. So I really went back to them quite a number of times and was like, do you need me this month? Do you need me next month? What's happening here? And then it was kind of like, oh, we're just pushing this to the side for the moment while we focus on a couple of other launches underneath our brand umbrella. So I was kind of like, okay, no worries. Well, I'll just wait and see what happens here. And then I was half expecting them to contact me within the next month, as they said that they would. Then they never contacted me. And then I started seeing on their YouTube channel that they had instead gotten another person who didn't look like me, but did have some similar features, which I did kind of find funny. And they sort of like replaced me without saying anything. So I basically saw all these new videos coming up on their YouTube channel when they told me that they had stopped production of the videos for now. They hadn't, they'd kept going, and they had actually hired someone else or another content creator to do the content for them. So that was a bit of a stab to the heart in some ways. I was like, oh, this is how I find out. They're not even gonna tell me. So yeah, that was kind of a sad moment for me. They basically just ghosted me. I never got the rest of the scripts and I never got to do the remainder of the videos. So whether the feedback was just like a cover for the fact that they were really not liking the videos, I have no idea at this point. But yeah, that was my third fail for 2024. And again, contributed to this time earlier on in the year where it was a big struggle financially. And it was so hard to know what money was coming in, when it was coming in, and if the money was coming in. So that was a really testing period of time earlier this year for me financially. And this is the kind of stuff I feel like so many content creators face on a weekly and monthly basis. It is just the worst sometimes when this happens because you don't know how you're going to be sitting financially. So after those few fails for the year, then we move on to the fourth one that I'm going to mention today. And this particular point was actually happening in the aftermath of all of this. So financially, when I was not doing as well, and I got contacted by another brand that wanted to collaborate with me. And I was really interested in finding out more about the brand. I really liked their ideas for what we were potentially going to work on, and I hadn't done anything like that for my YouTube channel before. So I was like, cool, this is my first brand deal to kind of like rectify everything else of what's happened in the year, and we're moving on and we're starting afresh. And I really like the idea of this particular brand. Now, unfortunately, in the negotiation process for the monetary compensation, I was really whittled down on my rates. Originally, I went to them with my rates for a dedicated video, which is what they wanted. And there was some other stuff that I had to do and some setup things that I had to do around this that were going to take a lot of time. So essentially I went to them with my original rates, and they basically whittled me down to, I think it was like $200 US. And I told them that I basically could not do a dedicated video for that. I was happy to do more of an integration style video. Even to do an integration style video on YouTube for $200, I felt was extremely low. That's usually not the amount that I would charge for that, especially because of how much time it was going to take me to do this. They then said that we can't offer you more than that, but we'd like to to do 2 integrations for $400. And I was kind of like, well, you know, that's 400 US. Like for me at the moment, again, if you're not doing financially well as a content creator, at any point, these kinds of deals start to become more appealing to you and you start to be agreeable to whittling down your rates, which I don't always recommend doing. Even in these tougher times of trying to, you know, just survive, you absolutely have to eat and you absolutely have to earn money, but sometimes the red flags will pop up and you don't recognize them and you sort of look past that. And I definitely think that that's what I did in this particular process because of what they were asking of me. And they were asking a lot of me to do these videos, and I essentially just proceeded. I said, yep, I'll accept that for 2 videos. And they also used the spiel with me as well about, you know, after these videos we'll see and maybe we'll work with you long term kind of thing. So again, that got me thinking, okay, well maybe if I can just get through these 2 videos, maybe they'll work with me long term and I can potentially get another contract out of that. And financially, things might look up a little bit more too, and they might be a really great brand to work with. And so anyway, as I mentioned, I accepted this brand deal. Now, when I tell you that this brand deal was hard work, it was hard work. It's probably one of the longest brand deals that's ever dragged on for me, ever. And honestly, when I look back at how much was charged, how much I earned from this, and how spaced apart everything was, how long everything took to create, it was not worth it. And this is why it's so important to really stand your ground sometimes with your own rates, or to stand your ground with what you feel you need to produce for a certain amount of money if you're going to accept it. You really have to set your boundaries too. Not only when the contract actually came through to me did I see so many things in that was, for me, I felt quite unacceptable. I actually had to go back to them and say there was so many things in there that I just felt what I was not comfortable with doing for the sake of $200 per video. There was a lot that they were asking for me. To sum it all up, I think in the contract they wanted the video done in like a couple of days, and I had to go back to them and be like, hey, you know, it's like only a couple of days away that the contract says this needs to be done. And not only that, but there was all this aftermath of like, I was to not work with competitors for months afterwards. I was to have links posted in all of my videos for months after this brand deal ended. And I was like, bruh, you're paying me like $200 and this is gonna take me weeks to do this video. And again, the reason why they actually were offering such a low amount is because they were only going off like a cost per view kind of structure, which I always see as a bit of a red flag with brands when they come to you with that, because it's not taking into consideration your time in creating the video whatsoever, or any advertising purposes, you know, any usage, anything. They're not really considering anything else other than specifically views. And I think more needs to be considered when negotiating rates for that kind of thing. So again, I got stuck into this and I was doing the videos, and every time I would finish a draft version of these videos, I would go back to them and the brand would always have a list of things that they would need me to change, and just constantly rectifying things. And every time I'm thinking, oh my God, this is taking me so long to do this video. If this was my freelance job at the moment, like the amount of time that would have been spent on this, I would have been charging more, and this is exactly where I went wrong. And so anyway, after a couple of revisions for the brand, I was like, okay, no more. I can no longer do any more revisions. This is that, like, this is done now. And then on several occasions, I actually posted the videos and they would be asking for revisions on things after everything had been approved and everything had been set out. My descriptions were filled, everything was ready to go, the video had been scheduled. And then they come back to me and be like, oh, actually, can we change this? And in the end, I just had to say, no, no. I've worked on these videos for over 4 months at this point. I can no longer dedicate any more time to these. This is it. Like, I could not do any more. Like I said, there was other things I actually had to set up around these videos that did not include doing the videos themselves. And that in itself took quite a lot of time to do that. I actually had to do this in conjunction with those videos. So honestly, it was a bit of a nightmare. My communication was actually quite terrible with my contact from this particular brand. There was a lot of contradicting statements that I was really struggling to navigate through with my contact. And again, it was just kind of like a mess of a time, which I could have been spending that time literally doing anything to kind of help my financial situation, to pitch out to different brands, to really try and gain new collaborations, or to just work on my YouTube channel. But no, a lot of that time was just spent to get a couple of $100s over the span of like 4 months. So again, lesson learned from this particular fail, try not to ever do that. As bad as financial situations can get at times, and as much as you want to just take everything, sometimes it's okay to say no. And in this instance, I feel that I probably should have said no when I noticed those red flags and when I noticed those things in the contract initially. I just should have been like, it's not going ahead. But you know, sometimes the allure of working ongoing with brands can really suck you into those initial really underpaid integrations and things like that. They might try to lure you in with that so they can kind of get a few integrations out of you for a really cheap price and then sort of say that they're going to work with you long term, and then they'll just ghost you afterwards, which is kind of exactly what happened with this. But to be honest, I kind of ghosted them because I was like, I don't want any more contact with this brand. I don't want to contact them anymore. I don't want to have anything more to do with them. This is done. I felt that what the brand offered was great, but unfortunately at the same time, I just didn't like working with the brand. So lots of lessons to be learned throughout all of these fails today, and I definitely should have been more on top of things, that's for sure. Well, thank you so much for watching this video today, and if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, make sure you do, because I'll be posting a lot more in future. Let me know down in the comment section below, as a content creator, what are some of your worst moments from this year? Have you had anything like this happen? I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comment section below, and if you have had some bad experiences, we can all just cry together because, yeah, as I mentioned, there was some pretty sad times this year, especially with some of the brands that I worked with. It was just sometimes not that fun. Also, make sure to hit the notification bell if you want to see more from this channel. But thank you so much again, as always, for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.